Hello, this is Sven from Autodesk speaking. Today I want to show you how we can provide a best-in-class user experience by using Fusion Lifecycle and Forge capabilities at the same time. I will show you based on the example of the design review process, how we can use Fusion Lifecycle to capture all the data, to manage the workflow behind a given business process, but then also provide a dedicated user interface for stakeholders that are not used to use a PLM system and need to interact with 3D geometry in an easy manner. But of course, you can also translate this to another business process. So what you will see right now will focus on reviewing data and taking some actions on the reviews and the findings that have been taken as part of the review process. But the same could be used in order to have a platform for the services people to track some issues that are recognized when they're on site at the machinery, or we can use the same process for the salespeople that want to derive a custom solution based on a standard product, for example, and want to do a handover of actions and changes to the engineering department. So this is just an example that can also be used with other business processes. But let's get started first. I'm here logged into Fusion Lifecycle, and in my to-do list I can see that there's a design review that is currently in preparation state that requires my action. So I just select this design review process, and we can see that we are managing a lot of details to really schedule this design review process properly. So we can define responsible people for the various stages of the review. We can schedule some dates. We can align this with a project, for example. And we can also have some fields at bottom where we'll in the end find all the findings of the design review that needs to be performed. All of this is driven by the workflow that is connected to this design review process. And we can see that right now we're on the second step, which is the preparation. So me as a user, I have to select the data to be reviewed, provide additional data if required, and then publish all the data in order to let someone perform the review. And once the review is performed, we will then maybe have to do some rework before we will then finally validate all the results and then complete the business process. So we're in the preparation phase right now. And one of the things that I need to do is that I need to select the geometry, the data set to be reviewed. So I need to select the right data set in the right release level, right version, and so on. And that's pretty easy here because this tenant is connected to a PDM environment, the engineering department. So I can easily browse all the engineering data that has been released because the release data is also available to the Fusion Lifecycle platform. And I can simply click on a given data set to be attached to this design review process. And of course, this data set also contains some geometry data, maybe the native IPT, IAM files, or maybe some converted files. But in the end, no matter what the format is, this data will then later on be visible in a 3D viewer to the reviewer that has been selected as a reviewer in here. So here we can see this is the user that needs to perform the review later on, and we'll just leave it as is. Now, besides the geometry, we maybe want to provide some additional documentation to the user that needs to perform the review. And we can easily do so by going into the Attachments tab and add any additional file that we want to share with the reviewer. We can see that there are some Excel tables here already, but we can also add some further files in here by just having the browser on the left-hand side and my Explorer on the right-hand side. And I can now just take the files that I want to add to this review process and then simply drag and drop those files to the design review and upload them directly to this review. And by doing so, the system will later on automatically ensure that the reviewer has access to this data. So I've done all my job. So I selected the geometry, I provided some additional attachments, and now I can then easily move this process into the next stage. And comment quickly has been provided because this will be then later on captured in history for the workflow process so that users will be aware about who performed the preparation and what the comments were. So now we're in the publication stage, and now a couple of things are happening. One thing is that first of all, this design review will be removed from my outstanding work list because I did all my job. I do not need to do anything further. Now it's up to someone else to perform the review. So this entry is gone from my to-do list. Secondly, what is happening is that the system will take this design review process as it is in stage 3. It will then take all the CAD files that have been selected for this review and push this to the Forge platform. It will let it convert and create all the preview data that we need to have in order to embed the Forge view later on in our custom UI. So this publication process will happen automatically and I do not need to do anything. Once this publication process is done, step number 3 is that the system will then automatically move this design review process to the next stage, which is stage 4, so that everybody will be aware about that this design review now is ready for review and that we are waiting for the review results. And then step 4, what is happening, which is that they're also notifying the person that has been selected as a reviewer for this design review process and let him know that the data has been prepared and that everything is ready for review. So this user will receive an email with a simple link inside in order to perform the review. And as we have seen before, this is an assignment of this design review to a person. So this is the person that will be notified about this design review process. And by the way, you can also see that we are tracking the actual dates here, so we can automatically recognize that there's a delay in the preparation, which is not good for me, but it's very good for the business process and the analysis that we can do at the same time where we want to see how many delays we had in the initial engineering activities. But while talking, we can now see that the workflow now is in stage 4, so all the batch processing has happened. And now I can show you how this mark can log into a custom dedicated UI that is using the Forge platform in order to perform the review easily. So this user is going to use this design review portal, but this could also be a services portal or product catalog, whatever you want to name it, to access data that is natively coming from Fusion Lifecycle, but is enriched by user experience powered by Autodesk Forge. So I will log in as this mark right now, and you will see that the first thing that I can see now on the screen are the reviews that require my action. That means this user doesn't have access to the full capabilities of Fusion Lifecycle. He only has the capability to access the design reviews that are pending, and all of those reviews, they will be shown here in this landing page automatically. And we can see that this is data coming from Fusion Lifecycle. So this DR0017 is the one that we have just prepared before. We can see the due dates, the status, and we can also get this see this preview image. Now this preview image is part of this automatic publication process to Forge because the CAD data is being converted into a viewing file, and at the same time we can also derive a thumbnail file to give the user a better user experience here to select the data to review. Now if you want to go ahead and start working on this review, we just select the designer review and get a view that allows us to analyze, visualize, and experience the 3D data on the left-hand side, and then interact with the review on the right-hand side by capturing all our findings. So if you first of all have a look on the viewer on the left-hand side, this is the viewer that's coming from the Forge platform that is based on the conversion that has happened in background automatically. And now in this viewer, we have a couple of nice features like sectioning. So we can apply some sectioning to this data in order to analyze it in more detail. We can also use some measurements in order to measure the distance between points or components. We can also use an exploded view. So we can also explode the whole design in order to explore its interiors and all the subcomponents which are included. And all of those things, they are performed by using browser technologies only. So the user that is doing this review only needs to have the URL that we can see on top in order to access the data. And then after logging in, he will automatically be able to visualize this data. There is no need to install any additional software for this. And these capabilities are also including some properties explorers. So we can click on any component in order to see some more information about these components, like the mass, like the weight, part numbers, and so on. And all of this information, of course, is coming from the iProperties in this design data. So we can analyze the data by using the view on the left-hand side. And now on the right-hand side, we can then capture quickly all the findings that we have. And these findings, they are split right now in two input fields where we can simply enter free text. But of course, we can also have a defined form with predefined option lists and checkboxes if we want to make it more dedicated for the design review process. But right now, we can just type in all the findings that we have, like that we have no issues, there are no concerns, there's no alternative required, so all is good, all is fine. And we can just type in all the text we have. Now, what is nice is that by clicking the Save button, we can automatically save this information in Fusion Lifecycle in context of the design review process. So we do not need to fill out a form that needs to be scanned later on, that needs to be uploaded later on, that needs to be analyzed. Instead, we have all of this information in real time now on the design review process. That means if we go back to the details page, we can see here that the review results now are showing us the comments that have been entered by the reviewer. There is no delay. We have this information instantly available as soon as the user clicks the Save button. But there's more than that. So if you click on the Files tab, for example, we can see that the users also have access to all the attachments that we uploaded before to the design review process. So users can easily click on the files in order to download them and then to open them up whenever needed. At the same time, the user is also able to upload new files. So they can click on this upload file in order maybe to document some issues that they recognized, have some animations, some simulations, some documents, whatever there is, and they just click on the document, they click on open, and then the files will be uploaded into the Files tab. And of course, those files will also automatically be uploaded into the Fusion Lifecycle, into the design review process. So if you go back to Fusion Lifecycle and go to the Attachments tab now, you can see that it automatically changes to 5 because this new document that has been uploaded by Mark is also available now inside of Fusion Lifecycle. There is no download, there is no emails that we need to send. We just save the data where it is required and then everyone will be able to grab it from there. So it's pretty straightforward. We have seen that we can analyze the data. We have seen that we can have some text comments to document some things to be changed, but we can also take benefit of the viewing capabilities and its markup capabilities to define things to be changed. So assume that we find out maybe that there's some wrong components or there's something wrong in the geometry, we can easily open up the markup capabilities and mark up the things that we want to be changed, like creating a frame and entering a text. Let's say this is the wrong lever. And then we can easily position it where we want to have it. You can see that we can change different colors and different forms and so on in order to create some remarks in the design. But the question now is how can we use this in order to derive an action? Well, this can be done easily by the last tab that we can see here. We can see that we have a Create Action button here that allows us now to create a new action inside of Fusion Lifecycle, and this action will be enriched with the image that we have on screen right now. So if we click on Create, the system will just capture a screenshot of what we have in the view on the left-hand side with the geometry plus the remarks, and we can easily define the tasks, the type of task, define the description of the task, and also define a due date to provide all the details that are required in order to process the change that we are asking for. So we want to replace the lever. This is a design change that we are asking for. and maybe there's more details in the files section. See files attached. And as I said, we can also define a due date. So we can define a due date when we expect this change to be completed, which will then allow us in Fusion Lifecycle to drive priorities for the users, what they need to do when, because this target completion date will also become part of the workflow that we're setting up based on this task in the background. So we just hit the Save button, and this will now create the task inside the Fusion Lifecycle with the image and all the details that we selected. Once the task has been created, we can see that it's now shown inside of this action list. And of course, we can go ahead and add further remarks. So maybe here we have a problem with the diameter. Based on the measurements, we maybe figured out that there's something wrong with the diameter. So we can go ahead and here create a remark here as well, the wrong error, and say diameter plus 0.5 mm. Whatever the problem is, you can easily describe it with all the markups. And again, we can create an action for this one as well. You can see we will have the new image of the new markup. Then we just define that we want to change diameter. Description, see image. This is a design change as well. And this time we want to have this fixed, I don't know, 7th of November. And again, we just hit the Save button to save this task and action inside of Fusion Lifecycle. Now it has been saved, and the task is added to the list. So you can see that it's very easy to capture all the notes, all the remarks that we have. And once we're done with that, we will just finish the design review process. So by clicking on this button, we will complete the review to let the users know that all the findings have been captured, that the process and the workflow can continue. So we just click here, we confirm with yes that we want to close the design review, and then it's really closed, and we are returning back to our landing page where we only have 4 reviews left, which are pending. Now, the one review that is complete right now is still accessible to a user by going into the completed reviews section. So here we can still find the one review that we were working on in order to have it at hand for later discussions and still be able to access all the findings that we captured, and also to track the process and the progress of the task and actions that have been performed, as we will see it in a minute. But first of all, let's see what's happening in Fusion Lifecycle, because remember that we created a couple of actions, and those actions, they are now captured inside the Fusion Lifecycle in context of the design review. So if I click on the Actions tab right now, we can see that the interactions in the design review view, they now created these 2 tasks for the team inside the Fusion Lifecycle. So we need to replace the lever, and we want to change the diameter. And the entries that we see here, these now are design review tasks. So these are really tasks to drive an action that it requires some processing. And the nice thing is that once we click on the tasks, we have all the information that have been entered by the reviewer at hand. There is no need to browse my emails to see what the findings were. There is no need to go into an Excel file and see the comments there and then copy it over into our processing utility. No, instead we have everything at hand automatically as soon as the users enter the information. And we do not only have the text. See, we also have the image, so we can immediately see what the user had on screen while they were taking those notes. The nice thing now is that also those tasks, they're driven by a workflow. So we have a workflow now in Fusion Lifecycle that will keep track of the activities on this task. It will ensure that we are managing those actions properly in order to provide good feedback to the customers or suppliers that perform the review. In the workflow, we can see that right now we're in a created state. So that means the task has been captured, but we need to assign it to someone first before this person will then do the work before we complete the task in the very end. And this now is done by using Fusion Lifecycle capabilities that allow us, for example, to define the estimate. So how much time is needed in order to perform this change? We can add this information. This will not be available to the external people, but we can use this information for planning and resource planning, for example, and we can then also assign it to a person to perform the task. Then we just hit the Save button in order to enrich the information that originates from the design review with some data that is required for us for proper processing. So once we define the assignee, we can then go into the workflow and easily assign it to the person. Please make it happen. Click on Assign. And now you can see that the task is in assigned status. So the persons that we selected will be notified by email. They will have the task in their inbox in order to work on this task. Now, as we're working on this task, the question is, how can the external people be aware of what we're doing? How do they know about our progress? Because we do not have an Excel table where we could enter the comments, right? And we do not want to do so. We do not want to share emails just to talk about where we are in the business process. So therefore, instead, the users can also go into this design review portal in order to track the process as well. Because if I go into one of the reviews that have been completed, I can click on that one. I can then again open the viewer. I can still see all the findings that have been captured at the time. Of course, I can also still access all the files that are uploaded, and I can see all the actions. But you can see that there's a color coding to the actions that let me know automatically about the maturity or the progress of those actions. So we can see the one has not been picked up yet, it's still in red, but the other one that we assigned to someone is now in assigned status. So the reviewer will automatically know that those actions now are in work, and they also know who is working on it. And at the same time, if they would ever forget about what were the remarks, what's the view that we created at the time, they can easily click on those actions in order to restore the view that they used in order to document the kind of change. So they can switch easily between the tasks and analyze again what they documented. So they can always access this data at a later point in time whenever needed in order to track the progress. And of course, in Fusion Lifecycle, everything is connected. So if we go back to this design review process, for example, we can now, for example, see that the reviewer has performed his task. He performed it in time, pretty nice. And we need to do the final validation until 11th or 9th of November. We can track the findings of the review. We have the attachments as we have seen. We have the actions connected to the design review process. And of course, the workflow is now tracking the progress as well, because we can see now we're in the 5th status, which is the rework, because all the actions that have been defined are not completed yet. So we need to rework those things first before we can close this design review. And that will conclude my demo. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have seen how easy user experience can be by using our cloud-based technologies. And happy to see you next time. Bye.